Okay, when I begin a project, usually at some point in preparation, I'll come up with a central image for the piece. And so I began work on Harry and Claire from a script standpoint, and the visualization of it was basically mechanical, trying to put the visuals into the script itself. But then a little while ago, I happened upon a photograph taken in the mid-70s of the rock singer Patti Smith with her lover Robert Mapplethorpe. They're both very young. These are two really great artists. The image is just bursting with sexual energy, bursting with this dynamic union of creative fire. It was jaw-dropping for me because I saw this image and I thought, my God, if I could come up with a 1980s equivalent of this image, that's the key to the characters of Claire and Harry in the film.
They're both very young, but they're both kind of in trouble. I guess I see Claire as kind of almost she's not really a victim of being a very rich girl, but she's somebody who was born into privilege, who doesn't feel that comfortable not having to do more in a way to get the things she gets. And because she's an alcoholic, and talking a little bit about addiction, I see her as an alcoholic. You're never really supposed to label other people as alcoholics. Her connection to people is both troubling. She's a really hard time connecting, and she's often her own worst enemy in terms of how she manages like a relationship.
These are two people, two artists, a musician, Harry, and a painter, Claire, young, in the 80s. It takes place in the 80s, living in Chicago, and they're both alcoholics, and they both have serious issues which have triggered the alcoholism.
Harry's mother is dying of alcoholism and probably depression, though in those days, didn't talk about that much. His father's already dead. She's never really had a life outside of her family. He's taken over his father's job, and she drinks all the time, his mother. So he doesn't really have a family, so he's very much a loner, and the bar has become kind of his home.
He makes his living playing this gig at this bar. Of course, the bar enables him to, feed that demon, his alcoholism. He's in a bar, he's playing, in a German pub, playing kind of oompa music for the crowds. And yet in his soul, he's a composer.
When he meets Claire, his immediate reaction to her is that she's very spoiled and sort of thoughtless, but then he also sort of sees this wounded animal in her, this wounded person who is lost. She's literally lost. I mean, he finds her in what's essentially a bodega.
And then Claire is this extraordinarily gifted artist who was born into serious money, so she doesn't really have to worry about sustaining herself. And she's free financially and in terms of time and so on and so forth to just do to inflict a lot of damage on herself.
He doesn't really understand what's going on with her, and she is on the brink of a breakdown, really, caused by not ever addressing a gang rape that she's been through, and also how much she drinks.
When you're an artist and when you're a young artist and you're trying to create and define yourself, the world chips away at you. Life becomes a very cruel proposition. In some ways, the more serious and talented you are, the more the world can chip away at you. It's death by 1,000 tiny cuts. And if you're already fragile, if you're already broken, well, then it can be almost unendurable.
I started drinking when I was 15, seriously using alcohol as a way to manage my feelings. And so the alcoholism part of it is very autobiographical. And I had a lot of company in that, though I was also very ashamed of it. at the same time, I maintained this kind of profile of success. I did it not badly in high school, and I had a 4.0 in college, but it was all very much controlling how much I really wanted to be drinking. I couldn't handle my emotions, how I felt about things, my family, without drinking. And I'm not sure I can blame that on anything, but I would say that when we grew up in Princeton and during the time we were there, most of our parents modeled a certain way of living that had a lot to do with life being made better by having a gin and tonic. It was a kind of cult, you know, that you have cocktails and then you have dinner and fine wine, and then if someone went over the edge and was an alcoholic, then you called them that, but you didn't have any sort of solution. They were just the alcoholic that lived down the street.
You're an artist, and you have to feed, yourself. You have to feed your soul. Life can be a soul-crushing proposition. So how do you overcome that? And Claire can no longer overcome that. She has stopped painting. She's even taken a knife and slashed one of her best paintings. And Harry, well, he's not composing any music. He's sort of an automaton. He's a jukebox, a living jukebox for songs that really have no purpose in our culture, but serve a purpose at this German pub. So that's kind of a living death. So perhaps when they come together, they can rejuvenate one another as artists. They can become one another's muse.
I'm not allowed to say this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it because Brad keeps telling me that I should claim the writing of it, but I think without him, this would not be a movie. I believe that. And I think that, yes, I did write it, but I can't think of a good metaphor, It really was his help that made this come to life, and hopefully that will make it come to screen. So I think that's what I really want to say. I want to say that he's awfully gifted at working with writers, and that is amazing because we're a difficult bunch.
Well, that's just because they're not writers too.
Exactly.
And that's their problem.
Yeah, I think so.
We're gonna, if you could edit that out, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
you can take out you can take it all out because he doesn't. He made, and I'm just like,
Whatever.
whatever.